massive disruptions are hitting Europe right now, right? Troops are being called out, over 1,200 troops. Emergency services are being suspended, and airline and railway travel is being disrupted as well. So, this is a big deal, and it's also one of these things. What's happening? Why do we see every excuse possible to shut down and hinder the supply chain and the normal services that we have access to in these countries? All right, so Europe's getting hit right now by massive strikes. The UK and France are having massive strikes, massive worker protests, and they're disrupting critical services to the point where the UK has to call out 1,200 of their military personnel to operate emergency services throughout the UK. All right. So let's dive into what's going on here. France as well. France is having their airlines shut down from strikes and having rail problems as well. So let's dive into what's going on here. And this could also happen in America. We've seen massive strikes, and it's just any excuse to shut down the supply chain. And I get it why people are striking. I understand people are not able to afford to live. The price of living is going up. All right, inflation is going up. It's harder and harder to survive, but people don't realize that's engineered, and then they are also being used and engineered to make the collapse even worse potentially. All right, so let's hope things get better for the workers here. All right, I want everyone to have good working conditions and be happy with their jobs. All right, everybody wants that, but at the same time, these are emergency services. You signed up to, you know, be there for an emergency like ambulances. You should be there. You should be at your job no matter what. People need your help. They shouldn't be calling out the military to do this. All right, so December strikes, 1,200 troops to cover for ambulances and border force. This is coming out of the UK. This just happened today, December 18th, Sunday. They said that they're going to summon over 1,200 troops to drive ambulances throughout the country because there are not enough drivers from these strikes. About 1,200 members of the military and 1,000 civil servants are to be drafted into cover for striking ambulance and border force staff over Christmas. The government say the personnel will plug staffing gaps and keep frontline services running. Some 10,000 ambulance staff in England and Wales will strike on the 21st and 28th of December in a pay dispute. Unions say military staff are not, quote, sufficiently trained to taking on ambulance roles. This is true. The military cannot just fill every gap. And we saw this the past 2 years in the United States where there was all these things, there's all these medical emergencies, and we just use the military. It's like, oh, just send the military in there, the military do it, military hospital, military this or that. It's like the military is trained for highly logistic wars, all right? They are trained for that. They are not trained to drive ambulances, right? And even the head of the military in the UK is saying this. The head of the armed forces has warned against viewing troops as the, quote, go-to option when it comes to covering strike action. Speaking to the Sunday Telegraph, Chief of Defense Staff Admiral Sir Tony Radakin said, quote, we are not spare capacity. We're busy and we're doing lots of things on the behalf of the nation. We've got to focus on our primary role, right? So this is true. It's kind of a degeneration of society when we have to have the military. That's what third world countries do that don't have operating functional societies. They bring in the military, and the military and the government just runs everything and operates everything. There's no private services. It's all government and all military. All right. We are also seeing train strikes happen in the UK and airline strikes in France. We'll get to that in just a second, but let's hit these train strikes because they are also disrupting travel in the UK as well. And this is one of these things where you don't know. You don't want to be dependent on airlines or trains. That's why it's so great to just have your own transportation. I know not everybody can do that, but that's what's great about America and gas engines. All right, you can be anywhere, anytime, fill up your engine and get going. All right, train passengers are facing further disruption on the last weekend before Christmas as rail workers continue strike action on Saturday. Most services are affected as RMT union members stage the second day of their latest 48-hour walkout. Network Rail has advised people not to travel on trains unless it is absolutely necessary. The strike comes as shops and hospitality businesses look to boost trade in the key Christmas period. So, also, yep, great time to hit right before Christmas. People are trying to travel, people are trying to get to their family, people are trying to get home, and they're shutting down. It's just one of these things. I don't trust these unions at all. All right. I hope the workers have good intentions, but the unions, the people coordinating this, I really don't trust them. And they have a lot of power to just shut down critical infrastructure in our countries, right? It's kind of dangerous how much power they have. So nurses pledge tougher new strikes as NHS crisis deepens. I forgot to mention there's also nurse strikes in the UK. So nurse strikes, rail strikes, airline strikes, and ambulance strikes. All the critical infrastructure is going on strike at the same exact time. Very suspicious and very sketchy, right? So nursing unions gives ministers until Thursday to open pay talks as first signs emerge of a bid to end dispute and prevent NHS collapse. All right, so their medical system is a government medical system over there, and they're fighting with the unions, and they're saying that they could experience collapse from these nursing strikes too. So union leaders threatened on Saturday night to order a fresh wave of more severe strikes in the new year, in which nurses would offer, quote, less generous support inside hospitals and a dramatic escalation of their pay dispute with the government. So I'm not even sure what that means. They would offer less generous support inside hospitals. So I think they're saying if they don't, they will continue to strike, and even if they're not striking, they will just not help as much. They're not going to fill the same roles unless they get paid more. The Royal College of Nursing, in a marked hardening of its line, said there would be, quote, more hospitals and more nurses taking part than at present in strikes throughout January unless ministers back down by Thursday. The RCN said it would reveal its timetable of bigger and wider disputes if ministers failed to open new talks on pay within 48 hours of a second day of action planned for this Tuesday. All right, so they're just threatening more strikes, more demands, and more people are going to join if they don't get an agreement. And January is right around the corner, right? So let's dive into what's also happening in France here. France travel looks set to be highly disrupted during Christmas and New Year. Disruption currently looks likely across trains and planes throughout France. From December 15th to the 19th, there are planned strikes by rail workers who are protesting against the employees. We almost saw the same thing here in the U.S. This massive strike was averted, but there's also a lot of covert talk that strikes could go back on because a lot of workers are not happy with what they got. The state-owned railway company SNCF for a lack of negotiation on pay terms. Both of the major rail unions are supporting the strikes in different ways. There are planned industrial action over both holiday weekends from December 23rd to the 26th and December 30th to January 2nd by rail conductors and ticket collectors as an idea on the expected disruption. The last time this happened earlier this month, about 60% of all intercity and high-speed trains were canceled across France. So 60% and trains are critical in Europe. A lot of people don't have cars. They use the central transportation in Europe, and 60% canceled from these disruptions. Air France cabin crew unions have issued a strike notice between December 22nd and January 2nd as crews on other airline services servicing France, notably Corsair and Air Antilles. All right, so they're also having disruptions and strikes between December 22nd and January 2nd for Air France as well. So let me know what you think about all these strikes. Do you think that they are genuine, or do you think it's a mix? I think it's kind of a mix. I think they are playing on people's emotions. People see there's things wrong, but the union bosses are kind of using people to shut down critical infrastructure and make things even worse, which might make prices even higher for them and cause even more disruptions. They're upset that they're not getting paid enough, they're not being treated right. Well, these disruptions might make things even more expensive.